Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome back to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. This is Shyam Kagod here. Now before I start the discussion, if there is no issue with the sound, can you give me a thumbs up? Can we start? Okay, great. Let's start. So the next concept I'll be discussing is the idea of a planning or the chapter of planning. Now before I start, here are certain very important points. Please remember this. You don't have to buy at these points. One, concept of planning is very, very big. Right? It's a very large idea in India. Why do I say that? So far in case of India, we have implemented 12 5-year plans. Simple. We have implemented how many plans? 12 5-year plans. Right? Which means if you take, let's say, 10 pages for each of the 5-year plan. So how many pages totally for 5-year plans? 120 pages. Now this is where I'll ask you, think of it rationally. Point number one, can you read 120 pages only on planning? Is it okay? Can you read 120 pages only on planning? Let's say you will read. And someone will say, yes sir, I can read that. How much will you remember? How much will you remember? Right? Let me give a very basic idea. For every plan, for every 5-year plan, you have a target that you are supposed to achieve, that is target GDP growth rate, and you will basically also have what you have actually achieved. One is a target growth rate and the second one is what you have actually achieved. So here itself you have two growth rates. And you have two growth rates. Now imagine set of two growth rates for 12 5-year plans. So totally how many numbers you are supposed to remember? 24 set or 24 numbers, and not just randomly. I hope you understand, not just randomly. You'll have to remember them sequentially, right? And that too in a group of two like this. So all I'm trying to say is simply this. Do not read everything or anything that you come across planning. Please don't read everything about planning. Not at all needed. Not at all needed for civil services. You don't trust me? Open up last 10 years question papers and you see how many questions have come from planning. You check it. I will tell you the data. In the last 5 years, one question appeared in the prelims. Sorry, two questions appeared in the prelims and one question appeared in the mains. Is it okay? In the last 5 years, two questions have come in the prelims, not in the same year, in different years. And one question has come in the mains. That's a reason, again, I'll be very, very careful if I'm reading the concept of planning. You do not have to start reading, right? I've seen many books have started like this. First 5-year plan. They will write 2 pages of information on first 5-year plan. Then they'll start a second 5-year plan. They will give another 2 pages of information on second 5-year plan. Same thing, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. By the time you reach 7th plan, you will not even know what actually happened in the second 5-year plan. And you will keep on doing this again and again and again and again without realizing that these are not actually required for UPSC. Right? So I hope you understand, you don't have to read everything about planning. Then you will ask me, sir, what are the important things then? What should I focus on? I will tell you. Focus on Niti Aayog. We will discuss this. Point 1, focus on Niti Aayog. Why? Post 2015, concept of Niti Aayog or Niti Aayog has become famous in India. We do not have planning commission, right? I hope you understand. We do not have planning commission today. Second, even if you read about the 12 5-year plans, please do not by heart everything. Try to by heart important 3 to 4 points, and that is also very much, I know that. Try to by heart 3 to 4 points related to every 5-year plan. So even if you remember, let's say 3 points for every 5-year plan, that will be how much? 12 into 3, 36 points. 12 into 3, how much? 36 points. That should be more than sufficient. As far as I'm concerned, much more than what is actually required for civil services. Done? Now, with this caveat, let me start. What are the areas we'll be covering, right? What areas we'll be covering in the concept of planning? We'll start with, right, the concept of economic planning. Then we'll have a discussion on 5-year plans, planning commission, National Development Council, the 5-year plans, what is the evaluation of all the 12 5-year plans, and finally, we'll start with Niti Aayog. And once we are done with Niti Aayog, as usual, questions that have appeared in the last 5 years from this chapter, we'll have a look at it. Okay, now let's start. Let's start then. What do you mean by economic planning? What is the meaning of economic planning? Simple. Whenever you talk about planning, remember this, there can be two ways, or there are two different ways through which plans can be made. Generally, you will come across a concept of centralized planning. You'll come across centralized planning, right? That is basically a concept wherein there is a central command economy, right? There is a central command economy. What do you mean by central command economy? Simple logic. The government here, in this economy, the government here will formulate the plan, will implement the plan, will not allow the private sector to participate. Everything will be done by the government itself. Is it okay? Whenever you come across the term centralized planning, what does it actually mean? The government here basically doesn't allow the private sector. The government will formulate the plan. The government will implement the plan. Private sector is not allowed. Government will decide what prices should be decided for the goods, what goods should be produced, etc., etc., etc. That is basically the concept of central command economy or centralized planning. Whereas, on the other hand, right, another name for this is also imperative planning. There is also one more name for this, imperative planning. Imperative, central command or centralized, all of them one and the same. On the other hand, you also have indicative planning. You also have a concept of indicative planning. What is the meaning of indicative planning? In indicative planning, the central government or the center formulates the plan. Is it okay? The center formulates the plan. But in the implementation of the plan, private sector is also allowed. In the implementation of the plan, private sector is also allowed. Any difficulty in understanding both of them? Please do let me know. Please type in your questions so that I can address them and then go forward. Okay, so again I'll repeat it. One is indicative planning and the other one is imperative planning. In the context of indicative planning, right? In case of indicative planning, what you generally see? The government will formulate a plan, but it will allow the private sector to participate in order to achieve the targets under the plan. Which also means, apart from the government deciding what to be produced, how much to be produced, at what prices to be sold, etc., etc., private sector is also involved in the decision making. For example, this product, private sector has manufactured it. Private sector is deciding the price of the product. Whereas if you go for imperative planning, a centralized planning or a central command economy, the central level, they will decide the plan, formulate the plan, decide the plan, and they will implement the plan. Private sector is not allowed. Government will decide what to be produced, at what price to be sold in the market, etc., etc., etc. So that is the basic idea of concept of planning. Now, next question, why do we require planning? Why do we need the concept of planning in the first place? Why can't we just have any kind of a module? Why planning is required? Simple. You require planning because government wants to achieve certain objectives. Just like all of you have planned for civil services examination. You have planned, okay, 3 months I will finish my classes. Next 3 months I'll focus on this. Next 3 months I'll focus on this, etc., etc., etc. Or some of you would have planned 5 years, a 5-year plan will be there. So argument is simple. Just like you know what is your target, and to achieve the target, what you're supposed to do, the same way, government also plans. And this is called as economic planning. The government or the central authority will set up the targets for the duration of the plan or for the economy, and to achieve these targets, how should we utilize the resources? Simple. To achieve these targets, we have certain resources. For example, we have iron ore. We have, let's say, human resources. We have so much amount of money, etc., etc., etc. So how do we allocate these resources to achieve these targets? That is a concept of economic planning. This is the idea of economic planning. And as per the targets that have been established, the resources will also be allocated by the government. Okay, the state, that is the government, will formulate physical as well as the financial controls to achieve these targets. That is, the government might basically have certain regulatory mechanisms in place or implement certain policies in place in order to promote or private sector participation. This is the basic idea of economic planning. Any doubt regarding any of the point that I've discussed? Please do let me know. Any doubts? Now, why did Government of India go for economic planning? What were the points which actually led to Government of India deciding, let's go for planning? Because please understand this, even before the 5-year plans, right? I hope you understand my point here. We started implementing 5-year plans from 1951. Simple. We started the idea of implementing the 5-year plans from 1951. But even before this idea of a 5-year plans, there were multiple recommendations. We'll have a look at some of them. But why did we come to a decision? Why Government of India decided, okay, we should have plans like this? These are some of the reasons. Let's go one by one. First one, India, right, that is the Indian economy, had fallen into low-level equilibrium trap. The whole of economy had fallen into low-level equilibrium trap. Now, I hope you remember this concept, right? Again, I'm in the 5th weekend. This we have discussed, I believe, in the 1st weekend. That is, here is, right, let's say a person X. Person X will earn 100 rupees. Out of 100 rupees, let's say the person will save 40 rupees, put it in the bank. The bank will use this 40 rupees, issue it as a loan to a company. Company will take a loan, purchase a machine, and produce and supply goods to the market. Do you remember the cycle? Produce and supply the goods to the market. And what is the outcome of this? It's basically an expansion, or let's say a part of virtuous cycle. Right? We have discussed this. And what is the outcome because of this? The outcome is employment will increase. Investment or capital formation in the economy will increase. The supply of goods and services and the demand for goods and services will increase. And as a result of all of this, the GDP of the country will also increase. Right? Any doubts regarding this? Please raise that doubt. So, argument of Government of India at this point of time was, in case of Indian economy, the savings rate was very low. The savings rate were very, very low. And there was a very good reason for it. Why? More than 50% of the GDP contribution came from agriculture sector. More than 70% of the labor was there in the agriculture sector. So most of the contribution comes from agriculture sector, and obviously incomes in the agriculture sector are very, very low. If the incomes are very low, savings would also be very, very low. And if the savings rate are very low, the investment in the economy would be very low. And as a result of this, the GDP of Indian economy will also be very low. Is the logic okay? Right, in the economy, savings rate is low. And because the savings rate is lower, right, the whole investment, production, supply, GDP will also be on a lower side. Now you tell me, if the employment rate is again lower because of this, what will happen to the earnings? Earnings again will be low. And if the earnings are lower, again the savings will also be lower. The same cycle will continue. The same cycle will keep on continuing. So the government of India stated, we are having a situation wherein savings rate is very low. And if I can increase the savings rate, if I can basically increase the savings rate, then, right, the whole situation in the economy will change. Right, I need to create more jobs for that. Now question arises, sir, how can you increase the savings rate? Many of you ask me, sir, how to increase the savings rate? One, government will decide to set up a lot of industries. Government will decide to create employment generation. Government will promote a production of goods and services, thereby creating the opportunity for job generation, higher jobs, higher income, higher savings, and the cycle will continue. Right? And now, rather than having lower savings rate in the economy, now we will have very high savings rate. And higher savings rate, higher investment, higher employment, higher income, cycle will again continue. Is the logic okay with all of you? Right? So the argument of government of India was, the savings rate in case of India were very, very low, which affected investment. And government said, right, this lower investment basically will lead to low employment, low growth in the economy. The growth rate in the economy had got almost stagnated. Right, so we want to bring economy out of this trap. Right, savings are low, growth is low. Right, again, because growth is low, savings rate is low. So it's a complete trap like this. There is an equilibrium between both of them. So we want to bring the economy out of this equilibrium. We want to create disequilibrium. That was the whole idea. Point number one. Second, resources were very, very scarce at this point of time. Right, and please understand, even at this point of time, India was heavily dependent on imports. I hope you understand my point here. Even after the independence, India was heavily dependent on imports. We were heavily dependent on imports. Right, so understand this. Whatever resources we had, talk about, let's say, mineral resources, talk about industrial resources, there was a limited availability of resources. Now the concern with the government was, if I allow the private sector to utilize the resource, I repeat, if I allow the private sector entry to utilize all these resources, private sector will be focused only on production of the goods and services, which will lead to more profit for the company. Private sector is not worried about welfare in the society. Private sector is not worried what is the requirement for, what is the required goods and services in the economy. They will only think about their profit motive. That would lead to concentration of the wealth. And at this point of time, there was a huge poverty rate in India. That is, the poor people in case of India, the numbers were very, very high. So government of India decided, let's not give away the powers to private sector. If I give it away, private sector will only focus on profit, and that is not what I'm looking at right now. Right, so that was the second reason. Third reason, government wanted to create a lot of employment opportunities. Government wanted to promote agriculture sector because that was the one sector where most of the labor was involved. Most of the households in India were generating incomes through agriculture sector, etc. Right? That was also the reason why Government of India said, let me take the lead, let me make a plan, let me cover most of the important industries. To protect the national interest in the age of globalization, if you allow the private investment, especially from the foreign market, I have to understand this. If you allow foreign private sector companies, they will not allow Indian companies to grow. They'll simply kill because they have a lot of money, they have a lot of resources, they are better, right, in terms of technology. They will not allow the Indian companies to grow. So what I'll do, I'll protect the domestic market from the entry of foreign companies. And finally, to promote cooperation and coordination between the central government as well as the state government. So these are some of the reasons why Government of India decided to go for the concept of economic planning. Any doubts here? Any doubts? Now, before we started with the 5-year plans, right, we set up the Planning Commission in 1950. Remember this. We established Planning Commission in 1950. Even before Planning Commission was established in 1950, there were multiple proposals given to the government. Before independence, by the way. Before independence, multiple recommendations were given to the government. What are these recommendations? These are some of them. The first was recommended by Dr. M. Vishweshwaraya. Dr. M. Vishweshwaraya, back in 1934, proposed a plan for 10 years. I hope you understand. Proposed a plan for a duration of 10 years. And in this particular plan for India in 10 years, the objective was to increase the national income. At this point of time, the national income of India was somewhere around 2,900 crore rupees. Somewhere around 2,900 crore. As per this plan, they wanted to double this to more than 5,000 crore rupees. Right? So understand this. This was the plan which was recommended by Dr. M. Vishweshwaraya. Under this plan, we wanted to double the national income from around 2,900 crore rupees to more than 5,000 crore rupees. And under this plan, the recommendation was to have a planning body. Right? The plan was to have one body which will consist of 5 to 7 members. 5 to 7 members, and this planning body having 5 to 7 members will be responsible, will be referred as a planning commission body, and they'll be responsible for the implementation of this 10-year plan. Apart from this, in the same plan, the recommendation was also that private sector will, the government will not be able to cater to all the requirements in the economy. I hope you understand this. Government will never be able to cater to the requirements of all the parts of the economy. Private sector entry should be allowed. To a certain extent, private sector entry should be there. Point number 3. Point number 4. The total amount of investment, capital investment, remember this. The total amount of investment, capital investment, it recommended that we should increase it to 1,000 crore rupees. At this point of time, the total amount of investment in the economy, capital investment, was somewhere around 300 crore rupees. It recommended that we should further increase it to 1,000 crore rupees. And finally, it also recommended that the total value of goods which are produced in the economy should be increased to 2,000 crore rupees. The goods which are produced in the economy should also be increased to 2,000 crore rupees. Again, these are proposals. These are just proposals. Did we implement the plan? How many of you think we implemented the 10-year plan which was proposed by Dr. M. Vishweshwaraya? How many of you think so? It was not implemented, and it should be very clear to you. Why? Look at the year when it was proposed. Please look at the year. You automatically understand. When it was proposed back in 1934, we had a British government at this point of time. So how can we implement a plan which was proposed by Dr. M. Vishweshwaraya? So of course, yes, just to understand the evolution of planning in India, you should know that there was a plan that was recommended by Dr. M. Vishwesvaraya, under which our aim was to double the national income in the next 10 years to more than 5,000 crore rupees. And in fact, it recommended that we should have a planning commission. We should have a body which consists of 5 to 7 members, which will be referred as planning commission. After this, there was also a national planning committee which was set up under the chairmanship of Pandit Nehru. Right, that was set up in the year 1938. When you read the modern Indian history, it could not be over for you, or it is not yet over. Please don't worry. Don't have a heart attack. You will realize that during 1938, right, the Indian National Congress, the chairperson of the Indian National Congress was Bose. And right, within the Indian National Congress, we also set up a committee which was very famously referred to as NPC, National Planning Committee. And the National Planning Committee came out with multiple reports. None of them were implemented. None of them were actually discussed at that point of time. Why? The reason is very simple. 1938, the committee was set up to recommend planning for India. And in 1939, what happened? You tell me. 1938, the committee was set up. In 1939, what do you think happened? Right, sir, you have not discussed it. I don't have to discuss it. You already have learned about it in your high school. World War II, Second World War. Second World War. The Second World War actually broke out. So do you think at this point of time, the National Congress or even Gandhiji, etc., they were discussing about planning, or they were discussing should we support the Britishers or not? Right, so understand the logic here. NPC was set up, chairman was appointed, but not much of the work done by the NPC was discussed because the focus was shifted. But this is one of the recommendations. The committee recommended that government should control important industries. I'll repeat. The committee recommended that government should not give away all these industries to private sector. No, it should control most of these industries, right? Because private sector will not be worried about welfare. Private sector will not be worried about national interest. Private sector will be focused only on one thing, profit. So what we can do here in order to protect ourselves, right? What should we do in order to protect ourselves? Right, in the economy, when the plans are made and implemented, government should be owning important industries. All these industries should not be given away to private sector. Then there was one more recommendation, Bombay Plan. Some of the books have given 1944, some of the books have given 1943. Don't worry. 1943, the proposal actually started. Right, 1943, there was one more plan that was proposed, a Bombay Plan. Very, very famous plan. Why? It was not given by the Congress, that is Indian National Congress. I'm not talking about the Congress party now. I'm talking about Indian National Congress. It was not given by the INC. It was not given by economists as well. This was given by group of industrialists. This was proposed by a group of industrialists, or in simple terms, businessmen. So around 8 businessmen came together and they formulated a plan, gave it to the government, and hence this was referred to as Bombay Plan. Right? Very famously referred to as Bombay Plan. In fact, the first industrial policy that was announced by the government in 1948, right, the inspiration for that came from the Bombay Plan itself. But anyways, in the Bombay Plan, what was proposed? They recommended that we should develop a lot of infrastructure. I'll repeat it. They recommended that we should develop a lot of infrastructure. Infrastructure must be developed. Sir, what kind of infrastructure? Roadways, railways, port infrastructure, etc. Right? One of the recommendation was we should be able to develop a lot of infrastructure. Second, the Bombay Plan did not cover shorter time period. It covered actually 15 years, 15. Remember this. Bombay Plan was proposed for a duration of 15 years. And in this duration of 15 years, the plan proposed that we should be able to double the income. Right? We should be able to double the income of India by the time period of 15 years. Right? And that is a precise reason. Have a look at this. In the span of 15 years, under Bombay plan, it was proposed to double the income, per capita income, from around $22 per person at that point of time. After 15 years, it could have reached $45 per capita. So they proposed doubling the per capita income in a span of 15 years. Right? So these are certain very, very important points regarding number of proposals which were given even before the independence. There was one more proposal, People's Plan. Right? That was given by one of the communist person. Right? People's Plan, Mr. M.N. Roy. Mr. M.N. Roy. People's Plan. There was one more proposal given in the name of Gandhian Plan. Shriman Narayan Agarwal, S.N. Agarwal. People's Plan, Gandhian Plan was recommended, given by, not recommended, given by Shriman Narayan Agarwal, S.N. Agarwal. Basically, inspired by Gandhian principles. What is Gandhian principles? Promote village industries. Right? The Gandhian Plan was focused on development of industries in the villages. Right? So there were different plans like this. They were recommended, but most of them were recommended before independence, hence none of them have been implemented. But here and there, certain proposals which are there in different plans have been taken, or the proposals of Government of India were inspired by earlier proposals. Now, these are certain important points. After this, in 1950, after the independence, in 1950, Government of India set up Planning Commission. The Government of India set up Planning Commission. And this was basically the process that was followed by the government. Now, do you need to remember all of this process? Now, absolutely no. Just for sake of information, I'm telling you this. Right? Why? We do not follow planning process now. We don't have 5-year plans now. I hope you understand. 2015, we dismantled Planning Commission. We brought in one more authority, Niti Aayog. And we don't have 5-year plans now. From 2015 itself, we have discontinued the implementation of 12th 5-year plan. So that's the reason, understand, just for the sake of information, please have a look at it. So the 5-year plan was supposed to be prepared by one authority, that is Planning Commission. What is the composition? I'll come to this, don't worry. There's a slide for this, I'll come to this. Right? Just give me some time. The 5-year plan first would be prepared by Planning Commission, and now once it is prepared, we would be sending it to one more authority, National Development Council, NDC. But a very important point to note here, neither was the Planning Commission nor was the Development Council a constitutional body. Both of them were not constitutional, in the sense there was no article in the Constitution of India which recommended having a Planning Commission and a National Development Council. Absolutely no. Both of them are basically the authorities which were set up through executive resolution of the government. Executive resolution. What do you mean by executive resolution? Simply through the order of the government. Is it okay? Both of them, that is a Planning Commission and the National Development Council, both was set up, were established through the order of the Government of India. There is no constitutional provision which mandates Planning Commission nor National Development Council. In that case, you can basically attach the same feature to Niti Aayog as well. I have to understand. Niti Aayog, is it a constitutional body? Right? Don't worry about the long form. Don't worry about the composition now. Please don't worry. We'll have a further discussion on it. Do you think Niti Aayog is a constitutional authority in India? Absolutely no. Right? Absolutely no. Government of India through the order dismantled Planning Commission and NDC. Because it is through an executive order that we have set up, again through executive order, we have dismantled them. And we set up one more authority, Niti Aayog. Right? So even Niti Aayog is not a constitutional authority. Please don't be confused in the exam. Right? So first, plan would be made by Planning Commission. Now it would be sent to NDC. And once it is approved in the NDC, it will be sent to the cabinet. And once it is approved in the cabinet, the 5-year plan would be discussed in the parliament. And after that, we would start implementing the 5-year plans. Done? Right, sir? Are these statutory authorities? Absolutely no. Understand the difference here. Slightly polity part now, slightly polity. Again, even if you have not understood this, it's okay, because I'm pretty sure when you attend the polity lectures, same thing will be discussed there. Whenever you come across constitutional authorities, there is a provision in the Constitution of India. There is an article in the Constitution of India regarding that. Sir, any example of it? Supreme Court, there is a provision. UPSC, there is a provision, right? Or for that matter, Comptroller, Auditor General, there is a provision. Whereas there are many other authorities which are not provided in the Constitution of India. Now there can be two types of other authorities. One, government will pass a law, and as a result of the law, there will be an authority. Right? Example for this, the best example is Food Corporation of India. Government of India passed a law, right? An act was passed or a bill was passed. It became an act, and as a result, we have Food Corporation of India. But sir, that is economics. Agreed. What about right to information? RTI. Under RTI, an authority has been established, authority has been set up, but RTI is not under the Constitution of India, right? A law was passed, hence an authority was established. Statutory authorities. Simple. Statutory authorities. But for 5-year plan, or that is a planning commission, law was not passed. There is no act of planning. There is no law by the name of Planning Act of 1950. Absolutely no. Simply through the executive authority. Executive means orders of the government. We set up an authority. That's it. Right. So have a look at this. First one is Planning Commission. Planning Commission was established in 1950. Now some of you will ask me, sir, if Planning Commission is already there, why did we have one more authority, National Development Council? Because the membership, if you see, most of it is common, but very important difference will exist here. That is, please have a look at the composition of Planning Commission. Look at the composition of Planning Commission. You will see the chairperson or the chairman is the Prime Minister. There is a deputy chairman. Experts are appointed in the Planning Commission. Certain ministers, right, will also be present of the central government. What is missing in the Planning Commission is a representation of the state government. All of you will agree? Right? What is missing in the Planning Commission is the representation of the state government. And that is the precise reason there was one more authority established in 1952, National Development Council. And in the National Development Council, right, you will see that there is a representation of center plus states. There is a representation of the center as well as states. Earlier in the Planning Commission, only center. But who are implementing the plans? Right? Out of all the agencies who are implementing 5-year plans, don't you think state government is also involved in the implementation of 5-year plans? So the 5-year plans were made by the Planning Commission. There is no representation of the states, and that is one of the biggest criticism against the Planning Commission. In fact, when Prime Minister announced that we will have a Niti Aayog, and understand this, we'll have a look at the composition of Niti Aayog later, please don't worry. One of the point that was mentioned was, as a chief minister, we are not involved in the process of planning. I'm paraphrasing here. Right? The Prime Minister basically stated that when I was a chief minister, we were not involved in the process of planning. That is, a planning commission is involved in making of a plan. We will come into picture only when the plans are ready. Right? What about our interest? What about our requirements? These are generally not considered when the plans are made. We will come into picture only after the preparation of the plan. So that is the reason, have a look at this. In 1950, we had one authority, no representation of the states. In 1952, one more authority was established where the states were represented. That's the reason the plans would be made by the Planning Commission, sent to the NDC. Once it is approved at NDC, it will be sent to the cabinet, then to the parliament. This was how the plans were made and then implemented. Now, the Planning Commission, did it have only the role of preparation of the plan? Absolutely no. After midway, that is generally around 2.5 years of implementation of a plan, there would be a review of the plan. And the Planning Commission was involved even in the review of the plan. And after the review is over, certain changes would be introduced to the 5-year plan. That is basically the idea of the making of 5-year plan, implementation of 5-year plan. Now, what did we try to achieve through the implementation of 5-year plans? What were the goals we wanted to achieve? I'll categorize these goals under 4 heads. But are these the only 4 goals which we were targeting? Of course, no. You'll understand in a minute. Let's go one by one. What are these 4 goals? First one is growth. Second one is equity. Third one is modernization. And the fourth one is self-reliance. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. First one is growth. Second one is equity. Third one is modernization. And the fourth one is self-reliance. And please understand this. These goals that I'm mentioning here, these are not the only goals. There are other goals also. You will understand in a minute. And second point, these goals were not mentioned in only one 5-year plan. They were mentioned in multiple 5-year plans. I hope you understand. These were mentioned in multiple 5-year plans. For example, if you talk about, let's say, the self-reliance, right, or modernization, these were not mentioned only in one of the 5-year plans. There are multiple 5-year plans wherein these concepts, or let's say the goals, have been mentioned by the Planning Commission. Let's take them one by one. First one is growth. First objective that we wanted to achieve is growth. Now let's start with the basics here. Is it okay if I say that if growth is higher for an economy, if GDP growth rate for a country keeps on increasing, automatically we expect poverty to come down? Any problem? Please do let me know. When a country, when an economy starts implementing or starts achieving, right, in terms of, let's say, high GDP growth rate, don't we expect poverty to come down? Don't we expect per capita incomes to increase? Right, etc., etc. That is a precise reason. One of the very important goals of the 5-year plans or the Planning Commission was to ensure that we will have high GDP growth rate. In fact, in the first couple of 5-year plans, especially first, second, and third like this, the central idea was to achieve very, very high GDP growth rate. Is it okay? Right, especially in the first couple of 5-year plans, our objective was to ensure that GDP growth rates will be very, very high. And you might be wondering, why, sir? Why the target? Why the primary importance was given to growth here? Because the government of India in the beginning believed in a theory called as trickle-down theory. Understand this carefully. In the beginning of the implementation of 5-year plans, the government believed in a theory which was referred to as trickle-down theory. Now, what is this idea of a trickle-down theory? Let me explain it. First and foremost, trickle-down theory is not an economic theory. It is more of a political theory. Let me know. I'm talking about trickle down. Okay, so trickle down theory that I'm referring to here is not a theory in economics. It is more of a political thinking, political theory. Point number one. Point number two, what does the trickle down theory state? It states that if government will provide benefits to rich people in the economy, understand this, if the government will provide benefits to rich people in the economy, then the benefits will flow down. The benefits will flow down to other sections of the economy. This is the problem part of this, right? I'll repeat it again. If the government will provide benefits to rich people, rich businessmen in the economy, these benefits will flow down. Flow down means what? Trickle down. Trickle is nothing but flowing down. These benefits will flow down to other sections of the society. Right? This was the theory. Now, before you start asking, sir, why, etc., let me explain, my dear. Have patience. Let me explain. So this was the theory. And that's the reason, again, I'm saying it's flawed. I know that. You also know that. It's flawed. Second, initially, Government of India believed that this will happen. That's the reason, initially, the primary importance in the planning was given to growth. It was given to growth. But later we realized, okay, this is not going to happen. And that's the reason you will see. Just keep on observing when I'll discuss first 5-year plan, second 5-year plan, third 5-year plan, fourth 5-year plan, fifth 5-year plan. What you will observe is the government policies will shift. Government policies will keep on shifting. For example, in fifth 5-year plan, government says, Garibi hatao. I hope you understand. Government says, Garibi hatao, meaning what? We will not promote growth, rather we will try to implement certain policies at the ground level. We'll start targeting at the ground level, that is a poorer section of the society, etc. like this. Again, when I have individual planning discussion or plans discussion, you will understand it. Now focus on the theory. What I'm saying is, according to trickle down theory, which is more of a political theory, not an economic theory, the theory stated that if you provide the benefit to rich people, rich businessmen in the economy, other sections of the society will start getting the benefit out of this. That is, the benefits will start flowing to other sections of the economy. How? Let me explain. Imagine here is a very rich businessman. Imagine here is a very rich businessman. Now, government will reduce the tax rate which is applicable on this person. Right? This is how this theory is explained. Follow this. The government will reduce the tax rate which is applicable to the business person like this. Now, because the tax rate applicable is lesser, the person has a lot of money now. What do you think the person will do with this lot of money? The person will invest in the economy. Simple. The person will invest in the economy. And when the person will invest in the economy, let's say they will invest and set up a company, this will create employment opportunities. This will create employment in the economy. And when they are investing, on one side they are creating jobs. On the other side, they will also produce goods and services supplied to the market. The supply of goods and services which are produced will increase. So on one side, employment is getting generated, which means the houses are earning more income. When they earn more income, automatically the demand for goods and services will increase. And as a result of this, this will basically lead to a virtuous cycle in the economy. This is what the concept of trickle down theory tells you. Is it okay? This is what the concept of trickle down theory will tell you. That is, cut taxes. Keep on cutting these taxes so that the companies will invest more, so that rich people will invest more, right? The jobs are getting generated, etc., etc., etc. Right? So this is the idea of a trickle down theory. Any problem with this theory? Let me know. Is it flawed? Of course, yes, it is flawed. Why? If a country is going through a slowdown or recession, understand this. If a country is going through a slowdown or recession, government should not cut its own revenues like this. If the government revenues are already very, very low, I hope you understand this. Some of you will say, but sir, earlier when you discussed, you said we should cut taxes. My dear, you should cut the taxes on a common man. Is the logic okay? You should cut the taxes on a common man. And please understand the next point as well. When you cut these taxes, your revenues are going to come down. And on the other hand, if you increase the borrowings, do you think market will have more confidence on you? Just think of it. Right? Some of you are asking, sir, did the government of Britain do the same thing? Yes, the government of Britain exactly did the same thing. And this is a flawed policy. I'll tell you why. Have a look at this. You should cut taxes, but on whom? On whom? Right? I hope you understand. You should cut the taxes, but on whom? Should you cut the taxes on a common man? Should you cut the taxes of rich people? Because please understand this, if you cut the taxes of rich people, doesn't matter, they will consume the same goods and services. Right? I hope you understand. In fact, very recently, there is a joke that is going on in case of India. People don't have money to purchase FMCG goods, but the sales of luxury cars have increased. I hope you understand this. People don't have money, right? Or let's say the demand for FMCG goods, fast-moving consumer goods, very much relevant, right? If you have read the newspapers in the last 2 days, Government of India is struggling to basically say nothing wrong with the third quarter GDP growth rate. I hope you understand my statement. Nothing wrong with the third quarter GDP growth rate. We have achieved a growth rate of 4.3% or 4.4%. Nothing wrong with it. Many of the experts are saying it is an indication of K-shaped recovery in case of India. Mr. Ananta Nageswaran, right, the CEA, Chief Economic Advisor to Government of India, has come out and given a statement. Nothing wrong. Please don't misread the documents. Right? What is your analysis is wrong. Why? Many of the experts are saying, okay, there's a problem in the economy. People are consuming lesser FMCG goods, fast-moving consumer goods. Sir, any example of an FMCG good? The biscuit packet that you are holding in your hand right now. Or the Maggi that you have eaten in the break. All these are examples of fast-moving consumer goods. Right? So, fast-moving consumer goods, the demand for that indicates what is the income in the economy. Think of it and answer to my question now. Is it okay if I say, if there is a growth in the FMCG goods demand, it generally indicates rise in the income of the people? Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement. Think of it. Some of you will take time to understand it. If there is a growth in the demand for the FMCG, it indicates that there is generally a rise in the income of the people. Is it correct? Answer is yes. It is correct. Why? Don't you think if your income increases, you will purchase more and more biscuits from the market? Right? Don't you think? Again, when I say you, do not take it individually as you. Right? Don't say, sir, no, sir. Last year also I purchased 1 packet. This year also I purchased 1 packet. My dear, I am talking collectively. Collectively. Everybody collectively. If incomes of all of us increase, the demand for these kind of goods, such as, let's say, wheat atta, demand for biscuits, demand for Maggi tends to rise in the market. That is the reason why FMCG goods demand is very much necessary to gauge what is happening in the economy. So come back to the discussion here. Come back to the discussion. Whenever government will reduce the taxes, they should target the common man, reduce their taxes so that the demand increases. if you reduce the taxes on the rich person, do you think they're worried about the tax rate? In the sense, do you think Mr. Mukesh Ambani will worry about the taxes that he is supposed to pay and will eat less rice today? How many of you think that would be correct? Right? He's worried about the income tax he's supposed to pay in the coming months. He'll purchase one packet lesser biscuit. That doesn't make any sense to you. Right? So the argument is, the idea is this, that is, the tax rate during a recession should be reduced, but not targeting rich people. You should target common man. You should basically target these common people. That's the whole idea. And if you have seen what was done by the previous prime minister in the Britain, that was a flawed idea. I hope you understand. That was a flawed idea. You targeted everyone, but the benefit of tax reduction for the poorest people was negligible. Negligible. Richest people had the highest amount of tax reduction. That is happening on one side, and on the other hand, government is borrowing heavily from the market. You tell me, how does it make sense as an economist? You are the economist now. You tell me, how does that make sense to you? You are giving more benefits to rich people by reducing taxation, and you are borrowing heavily from the market. Now question arises, how will you repay? How will you actually repay then? Right? That is a precise reason. Be very careful. Be very careful with these kind of things. Right? So again, coming back to the main point here, trickle down theory is basically a political theory, not an economic theory, political theory, wherein it says that if you provide tax benefits to rich people, if you provide benefits to rich businessmen, the investment in the economy would increase, and as a result of this, the benefit of this will start flowing to other sections of the society. Okay, this is at least what Government of India believed initially when they made 5-year plans. Right, so focus was on agriculture sector, industrialization, etc. But this was flawed. Even in case of India, it was flawed. I'll tell you why. The savings rate in case of India was very, very low. Right, just think of it. The savings rate in case of India is very, very low. You tell me, even if you have a trickle down theory, will it be effective? Even if Government of India goes ahead, spends a lot of money to set up industries, when the savings rate is very low, will it be effective? When most of the GDP contribution is coming from agriculture sector, do you think this will be effective? Right, so a flawed model. Second, right, let me go this side, equity, anti-clockwise. So first one is, right, the growth. Second one is equity. Now what is equity? We have discussed the term equity earlier, right? That is, equity simply represents fair treatment. I've told you this already. I'm repeating it again. Equity simply means fair treatment. Fair treatment. And understand this, this is not same as equal treatment. In fact, I've given you one example to prove my point. Earlier, right, sir, where did you discuss this? Finance Commission. Equity, Finance Commission, budgeting, etc., etc. That is when I was discussing gender budgeting. I told you this, right? Gender budgeting will promote equity in the economy. So understand the logic here. Second objective of the 5-year plan was basically equity. How did we target equity under this? Simple. There were regional imbalances. Is it okay? There were regional imbalances, regional disparities. Some of the regions, because of industrialization, because of XYZ, etc., the development, growth, etc. in these regions was good. But at the same point of time, there were also regions where there was no growth. The development was very poor, etc. So regional disparities existed. What about income disparities? Even income disparities were also present. So second objective under the Planning Commission that we wanted to achieve was reduce income inequality. Right? Basically, individuals should be able to meet the basic requirements, right? Basic requirements such as education, such as water, drinking water, such as nutritious food, etc., etc. And that's the reason, please remember this. When you discuss, let's say, poverty under social issues, and you come across, let's say, measurement of poverty, generally till Tendulkar committee, again, don't enter into all of this now. I just want to give you an idea here. Whenever you talk about different committees which are set up to measure poverty in India, until you arrive at Tendulkar committee, you will never see, right, the expenditure on education being a factor, expenditure on healthcare being a factor, etc., etc. Why? Government in the beginning, especially after independence, had decided, I will provide all of it. I'll basically provide all of it. Right? You want healthcare? I will provide it. You want education? I will provide it. And that is the precise reason, to begin with, these kind of requirements were provided by the government of India itself. So come back to the idea here. We wanted to reduce regional disparities. We wanted to reduce income disparities, etc. Right? That was basically the objective of equity. Third one, modernization. Right? What is the basic idea for modernization here? Modernization refers to adoption of new technologies, adoption of better equipments over a period of time, so that the productivity as well as the production will improve in the economy. That was basically the idea of modernization. And finally, self-reliance. The concept of self-reliance. That is, reduce the import dependence. Whatever you could manufacture in India, please manufacture. Rather than importing, focus on the manufacturing in India. There is a term called as import substitution. Understand this. There is something called as import substitution. What do you mean by import substitution policy? If you manufacture this product, if you manufacture this bottle in India, source the bottle from the domestic market, do not import it. Is the logic okay here? Let me know. If you manufacture this bottle and there is a demand for this bottle in India, please purchase it from the domestic market, do not import it. So substitute means what? Replace imports with what is manufactured in India. That was basically the policy of import substitution, which was followed to promote the idea of self-reliance. And import dependence at this point of time, there was a huge import dependence. For example, we borrowed heavily from external market. We imported raw materials. We imported machines into India. Right? We imported food grains into India. Right? So the whole idea was reduce the import dependence by promoting the idea of self-reliance. Right? So these were the four very important goals. Now have a look at this. If I achieve all these four goals, is it okay if I say that poverty will also be reduced? Is the logic okay? The poverty would also be reduced. Right? That is the fifth goal. I have not written it, but I hope you understand we will be able to achieve that. The regional disparities which are existing, the regional disparities or regional imbalances will also come down. It is not written as a separate goal, but you will be able to achieve that. The income disparities or income inequalities that are existing, you will be able to reduce that. Suddenly UPSC will ask you, were these the outcomes that we wanted to achieve through planning? You'll have to say yes. Don't say, sir, individually I have not written all of them. But you would have realized by now, if I can achieve growth, equity, modernization, self-reliance, poverty would be lower. Income inequality would be lower. Right? Import dependence would be lower. Right? Regional disparities would also be lower. So these are the most important points regarding the idea of a planning commission in India. Any doubts? Any doubts? Let me know. Otherwise, I'll go forward. Why trickle down did not work in India? I've told you, right? Majority of the contribution came from Agriculture sector, not industries, agriculture sector. The savings rate in case of India were very, very low. Right? The savings rate was very low. Most of the labor was concentrated in agriculture sector, more than 73%. So in that case, even if you provide industrialization, etc., it will not work out. Okay, shall I go to the next one? Any doubts so far? Shall I go to the next one? Arey Baba, I know, right? It's 7:15, it's tiring, etc., but participate. You should be able to tell me whether you have understood or not understood. At least that should not be very difficult for you. Okay, let's start then. 5-year plans. Right, the different 5-year plans, or let's say to be very precise, 12 5-year plans have been implemented. But please be very careful. All the 12 5-year plans were not implemented completely. Is it okay? All the 12 5-year plans were not implemented completely. For example, 3rd 5-year plan was cut short. 5th 5-year plan was cut short. 12th 5-year plan has been cut short. And there are various reasons for them. Don't worry. But how do you remember them? Right? How do you remember them? I'll give you a trick. Try to use the trick. At least you, with the trick, I hope it will become easier for you. What I've done here, I've divided all these 12 5-year plans into 3 groups. Right? Follow this. All the 12 5-year plans I've divided into 3 groups. In the first group, there'll be how many? 3 5-year plans. In the second group, there'll be 4 5-year plans. In the third group, there'll be 5 5-year plans. So totally 12. In the first group, 3. In the second group, 4. In the third group, 5. Is it difficult to remember? Is it difficult to remember? Right, just a sequence, 3, 4 and 5. Now you will ask me, sir, how exactly do I know that? Right, only 3 will be there here, 4 will be there and 5 will be there. I will tell you the facts. Follow this, understand the history, understand the evolution. It will make it easier for you to remember. The first 5-year plan started from 1951. There is no trick, you will have to remember. And there is no trick, but you'll have to remember. Okay, so the first 5-year plan will start in 1951. So 1951 plus 5, 56. Second 5-year plan will start from 56, will go until next 5 years, 61. Third 5-year plan will start from 61, right, will go until 66. And now take a break. In the sense, again, in planning, not in class. Take a break in the planning. Why? Many of you ask me, sir, why? Why did we take a break after this? Reason is simple. There are a lot of issues in the Indian economy. Simple. Lot of issues. Right? For example, we fought war. One war we fought with Pakistan. Another we fought with China. Now you tell me, when a country is fighting a war, do you think the money, that is the resources, will be diverted towards the growth or towards defense? This should not be very difficult for you. Right? When a country is fighting a war on 2 fronts, one with Pakistan and one with, let's say, China, like this, 62 and 65, not very far also. The resources will get diverted towards what? Of course, defense sector. And when you focus on the defense sector, obviously economy will suffer, point 1. In addition to that, what if I say there was a drought-like situation, famine-like situation in India at this point of time? So 1, you have diverted your resources to fight war. Second, you are dependent on the imports. Imports are continuously coming. Third, now there is a drought. Right? Multiple years of drought was experienced. Famine-like situation existed in India. Now, don't you think all of this will indicate that a lot of problems in the economy are existing? Planning will not be a priority right now. And that is the precise reason. Have a look at this. After the third 5-year plan, right? After this third 5-year plan, there was not fourth 5-year plan immediately implemented. We did not have fourth 5-year plan immediately after the third 5-year plan. For the next 3 years, from 66 to 69, in fact, even before 66, we have discontinued third 5-year plan. But for next 3 years, 66, 67, 67, 68, 68, 69, we did not have 5-year plans. Rather, we had annual plans. We did not have 5-year plans. Rather, we had annual plans. That is, for every year, plan will be made. Plan for 1 year. And this phase is called as plan holiday. Is it okay? This phase is referred to as plan holiday. Why it is called as a plan holiday? Not because there was no plan, because there was no 5-year plan. Is the logic okay? We call it as a plan holiday, not because there was no plan at this point of time. It is just because we did not have 5-year plans. Right? Now I hope you understand, right, why 3 5-year plans in the first phase or first grouping. Come to the second grouping, much more interesting evolution. 69 to 74 continuous, 74 to 79 continuous. Now there is a small disruption here. 1980 to 85. Now you will be like, shit, continuously it should have been there, sir. There is a gap. Very difficult for me to remember. I will tell you a trick. You tell me what happened during this phase. 74 to 79 is known for what in case of Indian economy? Emergency. Even if you have not studied any part in India, history is not over, sir. That is not over. I am pretty sure you know that this period is known for emergency. And after the emergency, what happened? After the emergency was lifted, elections were conducted. And I'm pretty sure you know that, right? The Congress party lost the elections and the Janata government or Janata party formed the government. There's a famous person here, Jai Prakash Narayan. Janata government was formed when? 1978. Simple. A new government was formed, or a party formed, another party formed a government. Right, Mr. Morarji Desai was the Prime Minister. And look at the ideologies here. Congress believed in 5-year plans. Mr. Morarji Desai, Janata government did not believe in that. So what they did? They discontinued 5th 5-year plan. Simple. They cut it short. And they implemented a concept called as rolling plan. Is it okay? They discontinued the 5th 5-year plan and they implemented a concept called as rolling plan. It is referred to as a rolling plan, or else another name for this is continuous plan. Rolling plan, another name for this is continuous plan. Now why it is called as a rolling plan or a continuous plan? Simple. They will have plans for long duration, let's say 5 years. But all these 5 years will be broken down into 5 annual plans. Follow the explanation. Once you understood, it's very easy. There is a plan for 5 years, but all this 5 year is broken into 5 units of 1 year each. So 1 year plan, 1 year plan, 1 year plan, 1 year plan, and 1 year plan. But why this is called as a rolling plan? Simple. Imagine you have implemented a plan for 78 and 79. This is one plan. Then there is a plan for 79 and 80. Once you finish the implementation of the plan for 1 year, you will, based on your experience, you will change the plan for 79 and 80. Is it okay? Based on your experience, you will make the changes in the plan for 79 and 80. Now you have implemented 1 year plan for 79 and 80. You are supposed to implement a plan for 80 and 81. Based on your experience in 79 and 80, now you will change the plan for 80 and 81. Now tell me, are you not planning continuously like this? Is it okay? Are you not making the changes to the plan continuously? 1 year you will implement, change the plan for next year. You will implement the plan for this year, change the plan for next year. So what are you doing? You are basically rolling. Rolling means continuously you are making changes in the plan. Hence, this is referred to as a rolling plan or continuous plan. Any difficulty in understanding this? Let me know. Any difficulty in understanding what is a rolling plan, what is a continuous planning? So this was implemented by Janata government. But simple, Janata government did not continue to have majority. They also lost the majority. Elections were conducted. Mrs. Indira Gandhi became the Prime Minister again. So again the government changed. That is the party which formed the government changed. Now when the party changes, ideology changes, how can they continue with the same 5-year plan or same earlier plan? So what the new government did was, they discontinued the rolling plan, they did away with the continuous planning and introduced a 5-year plan 80 to 85. Now see the plans. 80 to 85, right, done. 85 to 90, done. Now again there is a disruption. You tell me what happened here. All of you know this. What happened during this particular phase? There was an economic crisis all over again. Economic crisis all over again. Right, the forex reserves were depleting. Inflation rate was very, very high. Right, so can you implement a 5-year plan again? No, that is not a priority here. That's a reason, please remember, even in this phase, there was a plan holiday. Right, even in this phase, there was a plan holiday, annual plans were implemented. And after 2 years, continuously 5-year plans have been implemented. 92 to 97, that will be 8th 5-year plan. 97 to 02 or 02, 9th 5-year plan. 02 to 07, 07, not 07, 07, right, that would be 10th 5-year plan. 07 to 12, 11, and 12 to 17, 12th 5-year plan. In fact, the 12th 5-year plan was also not implemented fully, because in 2014 elections were conducted. Another party formed the government. They basically said, we don't believe in the 5-year plans. They dismantled the planning commission, discontinued 5-year plans in India. Now this is how you remember the 12 5-year plans. 1951 to 66, 69 to 90, 92 to 2017. 3, 4 and 5. Any difficulty in understanding the progress, let me know. Right, and whenever you see there is a gap like this, right, whenever you see there's a gap, something should have happened. Simple. Something should have happened. There should have been economic crisis. And whenever there has been an economic crisis like this, government has devalued the currency. Remember this. Government has devalued the currency. For example, 66, when Mrs. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister, government devalued the currency. Was criticized by most of the industries in India, was criticized heavily, but government of India has devalued the currency. 1991, government has devalued the currency. Right, so these are certain very important points regarding this. Any issues, do let me know now. Right, any issues, please do let me know. This is how you make it easier. I know so much of fact is there, but how do you make it easier? Try to make tricks like this so that you will remember the story. I remember the story. You should remember your story so that it is easier for you to write. Shall I go to the next one here? Any difficulty? Shall I go to the next one? So from 5-year plans have been discontinued after the 12th 5-year plan. We do not have any 5-year plan now. If you ask me, sir, which 5-year plan is being implemented? Absolutely no 5-year plan. Right, we have discontinued. There are no 5-year plans now. Done? Right, so this is the discussion I wanted to have. Now, rather than continuing this, because I'll start with points in first 5-year plan, second 5-year plan, till 12 5-year plans. That will take time. I don't want to disrupt in between again. Let's take up questions. Let's take up questions. Right, another half an hour is there. If we are able to finish the questions, again we'll come back to the 5-year plans. Don't worry. Have a look at the question here. Like I've already mentioned, Certain questions were there in the earlier chapters. We are yet to discuss that. Let's finish off those. Right, one question. The public expenditure management is a challenge to Government of India in the context of budget making during the post-liberalization period. Clarified. In fact, I remember it, and you should be able to recollect it as well. I discussed the first part of the question. I've discussed the first part of the question. Right, sir, in which chapter did you discuss this? Fiscal policy. The chapter of fiscal policy, that is a budget making process, I've covered it. Right, and I said, later you'll understand what you mean by post-liberalization. Now it should be very clear to you. Post-liberalization basically refers to the time period after 1991, from where we started implementing liberalization, privatization, and globalization reforms. Okay, so what are the challenges for the Government of India post 1991 in the budget making process? Simple. The fiscal deficit is a problem. Right, the crowding out. Have I discussed crowding out? I think I've discussed. Please do let me know. Have I discussed crowding out? Those people who have attended those classes should be able to tell me yes or no. Right, because I know some of you by default your answer is ready. No, 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 no. Have I discussed crowding out? Some of you are saying yes, and as usual some of you are saying no. Right, my dear, I should have discussed it. I generally don't leave these concepts. I should have discussed it. Right, anyways, I'll tell you the context also where I've discussed crowding out. Monetized deficit. Idea of monetized deficit. Right, so crowding out is simply increased interest rates because the government is borrowing more money and private sector will reduce their borrowings because the rate of interest is very high. So the challenges for the Government of India, in the public expenditure management is one, fiscal deficit, impact of the crowding out, globalization, which is basically going to lead to shocks, and that will have an impact on, right, that will have an impact on Indian stability or economic stability in India. Narrow tax net, that is the number of people who are paying taxes, right? Tax evasion is very high. Tax avoidance is also very high, etc. Capital expenditure requirements are very, very high because you are a developing country. Logic is simple. You are a developing country, and by the virtue of being a developing country, you need to invest a lot of money to promote infrastructure. Right, so right, as a result of this, capital expenditure requirements will also be very high. And the next one is populist tendencies. Again, there is no definition of populism. I understand. Right, the term that was used by Prime Minister was Revdi culture. Revdi culture, right? Again, there is no definition. I hope you understand. What is populism for you may not be populism for me. And what is populism for me may not be populism for you. So there is no right fixed definition for it. But anyways, populist tendencies such as, let me give a simple example, right? Loan waivers. Agriculture loan waivers. We have discussed the issue related to agriculture loan waivers last week. And I hope, remember, I told you this. These kinds of agriculture loan waivers will not resolve the problems in the Indian economy. Agriculture sector has a lot of problems. Those problems will not be addressed by loan waivers. What you are doing by providing a loan waiver is a temporary, right, relief is provided to farmers. That's it. Beyond that, there is no application of the benefit of a loan waiver in an economy such as India. Because I've told you, monsoon, if there is a change in the monsoon, farmer incomes will suffer. Right? Forget about monsoon. What about heat wave? Now add one more point. What about heat wave? If there's a heat wave, doesn't matter. Even in the next year, even in this year, the farmers will suffer. What if imports are very, very high? Farmers will suffer. So the argument is, just because you have announced a loan waiver, that will not provide relief to the farmers, that will not resolve structural problems of agriculture sector. But at that point of time, a temporary relief is provided to farmers. That's it. But what is the impact of that on the government finances? The revenue expenditure of the government will increase. Fiscal deficit of the Government of India will balloon. Right, so these are certain very important challenges that the government will face in the public expenditure management. Now, what are the measures which have been implemented for effective expenditure management? What measures have been implemented by the government? One, FRBM Act. Do you remember FRBM Act? Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act. FRBM simply stands for Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. And what is the whole objective of FRBM Act? Contain the expenses of Government of India. Improve the quality of expenditure of Government of India. Right? Is it not the objective? Of course, yes. How much government is spending, there should be a limit on it. How much government is borrowing, there should be a limit on it. For what purposes are we spending? There should be a control on it as well. That's the reason under FRBM, we have kept a target. Fiscal deficit should be limited to 3% of GDP. Revenue deficit should be limited to 0% of GDP. In addition to this, now there is a committee recommendation, that is FRBM Review Committee, NK Singh Review Committee, which has recommended that we should give targets for both, right? That is a fiscal deficit as well as revenue deficit. And by the way, how many of you remember the target that was given by FRBM Review Committee? Let me check. Start answering. Let me check. How many of you remember what are the targets which are given by FRBM Review Committee? Let me see how many of you remember. What is the target for fiscal deficit? What is the target for fiscal deficit? What is the target for revenue deficit? Target for revenue deficit is 0.8% of GDP. 0.8%. Target for fiscal deficit is 2.5%. And target for the debt of the central government is 38%. Is 38.7% like this. Right? Whereas for states it is 20%. Right, so these were the targets which were recommended by FRBM Review Committee. And I've told you by 2022-23 we are not able to achieve it. But anyways, remember the recommendations can be asked by UPSC. Okay, so one, FRBM, right? We have implemented that. Second one is railway budget now has been merged with union budget. What are the reasons? I've told you this. Railway budget is not a constitutional requirement. In the Constitution of India, there is no requirement of a separate railway budget. Because it was done by the British government before independence, we have continued the same practice. And now Government of India realized what is the reason? What is the requirement of having a separate railway budget? We are doing this as a convention. We are doing it because we have a practice of it. That's it. So what we have done? We have discontinued separate railway budget. Merged it with union budget, right? So within the union budget, there is a separate component railway budget. That's it. There is no separate railway budget, which we used to follow before 2016. Rationalization of the subsidies. Can I add a direct benefit transfer here? Rationalization of the subsidies, that is through direct benefit transfer. If you remember the concept of direct benefit transfer that we have discussed last week, right, we have implemented more than 300 schemes. We are covering more than 300 schemes under DBT now. And what is one of the outcomes of the DBT? And what is one of the outcomes? We are able to target the right beneficiaries and we are able to remove the duplicated beneficiaries, fake beneficiaries, etc. And as a result of this, the amount of expenditure, that is subsidy expenditure that we are able to incur under this has actually come down. It has actually come down, right? And in fact, it is there in the slide. Please have a look at it. I have taken the data from the recent economic survey. It is there in the slides of last week. Please check it, right? So rationalization of the subsidies. And finally, we have also implemented a new system by the name of PFMS, right? There is a new system we have implemented, PFMS. In the last 15 years, this has become very famous. What is this idea of a public financial management system? Simple. The public financial management system is basically a program that is used by the government. That is, using the public financial management system, government will be able to find out in real time, how much expenses are being incurred for different schemes. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. What is the importance of PFMS? Public Financial Management System is basically a computer program. That's it. It has been developed by the government, and what is the use of this program? Government in real time. They don't have to wait for anybody. They don't have to wait for the report. They don't have to start collecting the data now. No. In real time, government will be able to know how much money is being spent on which scheme, how much each of the states are getting, which scheme is being implemented with how much money, how much was the allocation, how much has been spent so far, etc., etc., etc. Real time. In real time, the data can be collected by the government. Public Financial Management System. So these are some of the reforms that have been implemented by the government to make a public expenditure management system much more, or public expenditure management much more effective in India. Done? Next question. Distinguish between capital budget and revenue budget. Explain the components of both of these budgets. This was asked by UPSC last year. Last year in the mains, this was the question. 10 marker. One of the most easiest questions that UPSC has ever asked. Why? If you're by-hearted, you will be able to write it very easily. If not, nothing. Right? I hope I understand this. One of the most easiest questions. Because at least in the context of, let's say, public expenditure management, you're supposed to think. You're supposed to put together your points. Dots have to be connected. But here, absolutely nothing. Either you know the answer or you don't know the answer. Right? And if you know the answer, if you can arrange it nicely, then you will get very good marks for these kind of answers. Done? Now, right, you remember the concept of a budget? Again, I'll not be discussing the budget now. The basic idea is simple. Budget is divided into two parts. One is called as revenue budget, and the second one is called as a capital budget. And what is the basic difference? In case of revenue budget, right, the government doesn't incur any kind of a liability. Neither the liabilities of the government change, nor the assets of the government change. Right? These are irredeemable part. Whereas in the context of capital budget, right, either the assets or liabilities of the government will change. Here, government will collect money or spend money because of day-to-day activities. Here, government will spend money either to create assets or will collect money by reducing the assets and, right, liabilities. So that is the basic idea between revenue and capital. That is what you're supposed to write here. Explain the components of both of these budgets. For the revenue is divided into two parts: revenue receipts, revenue expenditure. Capital part is divided into two parts: capital receipts and capital expenditure. All of this we have discussed. You need to simply remember them and arrange them nicely like this. You will be able to score very good marks here. Okay, done. One more question. Have a look at this. Women empowerment in India needs gender budgeting. What are the requirements and the status of gender budgeting in the Indian context? Again, three components: introduction, main body, and conclusion. What is there in the introduction? Right? What is gender budgeting? It is a practice of Government of India allocating, implementing, evaluating funds for promotion of gender empowerment. The idea of a gender budgeting was introduced in India from 2005 and 6. That's it. Introduction, that's it. Do not talk a lot or do not provide a lot of information, unnecessary information in the gender budgeting. Because, right, I've seen many answers where they will write, you know what, right, you know government has done this, you know government has done that, you know what, this was introduced now, etc., etc., etc. Not at all required, because the limit of words, right, I hope you understand, either you will have a limit of 150 words or 250 words. Many of the times you will have lot of info, The challenge is how do you arrange the info? And here is a trick. Here is a trick. Start answer writing from now. Do not wait, because I've seen students, I've seen aspirants who will wait for the prelims exams to be over. This is their strategy. This is their plan. Let me prepare for prelims seriously and let me appear for prelims. And once the prelims is over, I will start preparing for mains. If this is your strategy, please have a relook. Right? I know many of you are writing exams next year. Right? Many of them after that year. If you're writing exams next year and this is your strategy, please reevaluate. I'm not ordering. I'm saying please. Right? So why? Understand this. In prelims, all you need to do is put dots. Right? Either you know or you don't know. You will use elimination methodology, etc., etc. You will scratch. You will throw the dice. You will roll the, right? You will basically roll the eraser in the examination hall. Right? You will have to do simply dotting exercise like this. Right? Rangoli. Right? 100 dots, or let's say 50 or 60 or 70 dots as per your requirement. If to put this dotting, if this dotting exercise requires 1 year for you, then imagine after that. Right? You will have to write essay. You'll have to appear for 2 language papers. You will have to write 2 optional papers. Right? That is paper 1, paper 2. Then you will also have to write GS papers. GS paper 1, GS paper 2, GS paper 3, GS paper 4. And the worst part is, there is no Rangoli exercise now. There is only writing exercise. You want to become an expert in answer writing in 3 months. Is it possible? Again, please don't take it as a challenge. I am not challenging you people. That is no way my intention. Right? And that you should never follow. Right? Some of the students I see, how can you say this to me? This is an insult. You are attacking me personally. So what I'll do? I will take it as a challenge. For next 1 year, I'll prepare only for prelims. And after that, I will sit throughout the day, throughout the night, practice answer writing and write mains and prove you wrong. I'll be the happiest if you get through UPSC. I hope you understand. I'm very happy. But why to make it much more difficult? Make it easy. Make it easy. Right? The whole idea is not to make it difficult, make it easy. And that's what I'm saying again. You have more than 1 year. Don't wait for exams. Start answer writing practice now. Start answer writing practice. Okay, that's the reason I'm saying don't wait. Start at every day at least 1, or weekly 4 or 5, weekly 10, as many as possible from your side. Practice, 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 practice. So that by the time you go for preliminary examination, you already know how to write mains examination. And if you do that, trust me, if you do that, even if you don't know the complete answer to the question, you know how to basically prepare an answer at that point of a time. Because one more trick I will tell you, you should not leave any questions blank. In the sense, answer sheet, below the question, 20 questions are there. None of these 20 questions you should leave blank answer. You will have to write answer for all the 20. Right? So that's the reason you will not learn it in a single day. Trust me, you will not learn it in a single day. You will not learn it in a month also. It's a continuous process. It's a continuous process. It's not a sprint. It's not a race. It's a marathon. Please remember that. Right? So have a look at this question now. Women empowerment in India needs gender budgeting. What are the requirements and status of gender budgeting in the Indian context? I don't have to explain it for a very simple reason. We have discussed the same thing. Right? Only thing that you need to add is the latest data from the current years or the latest budget announcement. You'll have to pick up the data, put it and say this is a status of gender budgeting in India. right? That's it, right? That's a basic answer, right, for this kind of a question. Okay, now what are the reformative steps taken by the government to make the food grains distribution more effective in India? What measures have been taken by the government to make the food grain distribution much more effective in India? Let's start. Three components again: introduction, main body, and then way forward. What is there in the introduction? Government of India, through various policies such as National Food Security Act, has implemented measures in order to distribute food grains. Now come to the main body. Don't spend too many words on the introduction. Come to the main body. What measures have been implemented by the government to make the food grain distribution much more effective? For example, government has implemented National Food Security Act, under which we are implementing, right, a TPDS, targeted public distribution system. Now some of you will be confused. Some of you will be concerned. Sir, what is this targeted public distribution system? Under NFSA, we have discussed it. 75% of right, a rural population and 50% of urban population who are identified by the state government will be given free food grains for this year. This is nothing but targeted public distribution system. Is it okay? This is nothing but targeted public distribution system. Then we have discussed IMPDS in the context of One Nation, One Ration Card, ONOR. Right? We are using DBT Aadhaar linkage to identify who is the right beneficiary. We are also using negotiable warehouse receipt system to promote the storage and supply of food grains to the market. Right? End-to-end computerization has been implemented now. We also have proposed now the concept of e-rupee. Right? It is yet to be implemented in the context of, let's say, food grain distribution, but e-rupee as a concept, as a new reform, has been proposed by the government, wherein without providing the money, without having to transfer the money to the beneficiary, we can ensure the beneficiary will get access to benefits. Now some of you will ask, sir, how that is connected to, let's say, food grain distribution? Just think of it. Just think of it. As per the recommendations of Shanta Kumar committee, I've told you, in some of the union territories, we are providing cash subsidy. Do you remember this? Right? Under the food grain distribution system, we are providing cash subsidy. But what is the problem with cash subsidy? You will not be able to find out for what purpose the cash is being used. Now, rather than providing cash subsidy, can we use e-rupee there? Can we use e-rupee to ensure that they'll be able to purchase only food grain, whatever it is? They'll be able to purchase only food grain. That's again just a recommendation. That's a way forward that you can use. Right now we are not using it, but can we use it to ensure efficiency in the cash subsidy? Okay. Intervention in the storage as well as procurement, that is done by the government. In addition to this, you can also write Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, which was implemented starting 2020, has been withdrawn or subsumed under the NFSA very, very recently. Okay. But having said so, we need to implement more and more reforms in order to ensure that food grain distribution will become much more effective. For example, private sector investing more and developing warehousing in India. Right? Is there any reform regarding this? Of course, yes. Do you remember promotion of silo storages in India? Do you remember the concept of silo storages? Right? Government of India through public-private partnership is actually promoting the idea of a silo storage. Right? Implementation of various Shanta Kumar committee recommendations. For example, if you want to reduce the subsidy burden on the government, why not reduce the coverage of the population from 67% to 40%? Promote more and more utilization of electronic negotiable warehouse receipt system. Do not procure additional food grains, surplus food grains from the states which are announcing bonus over MSP, etc. So you can provide many of these as a way forward or recommendations to the government to make the idea of a food grain distribution much more effective. Done? Right? So food grain distribution is very much critical to the Indian economy because The food grain provision, or let's say the distribution of food grain, is not just associated with reduction in the poverty or promotion of agriculture sector, etc. It is also connected to the concept of sustainable development goals. Yes, DEG. There is this idea of a sustainable development goals. 17 goals are there under this. 17 goals. Initially, you will come across a Millennium Development Goal. 8 goals were there. And after that, we have implemented Sustainable Development Goals. Target year is 2030. And under the Sustainable Development Goals, we have set up 17 targets, 17 goals. Reduction in the hunger, reduction in the poverty, etc. All of them are part of SDG. So don't you think if you provide food grains, if you ensure food grain availability is there, food security is there, you will not only be meeting, right, various targets, you will also be helping yourself in meeting the targets under Sustainable Development Goals. That is basically one way to conclude this answer. Done? Right, so these are some of the descriptive questions that were covered earlier. Chapters were discussed earlier, but we were not able to discuss those questions. Today we have discussed. So that's it from my side for today. Tomorrow when I start, I'll start taking from first 5-year plan. First 5-year plan. Now before I start taking up your questions, here is a very important pointer. Tomorrow for the first 1.5 hour, that is from 10 to around 11:30 to 12, I will be throwing lot of factual information at you. Lot of factual information. You will hate me for it, but that doesn't matter. I will have to cover individually all the 5-year plans. Certain concepts are there. I will tell you the concepts. But apart from that, lot of facts are there. I will bombard you with the facts. Be ready for it. Please be ready. Whether you like it or you don't like it, that is not a matter here. I'm supposed to cover the 12 5-year plans. I will cover all of them. Right? So be ready with that. And after we are done with the 12 5-year plans, we will evaluate, critical evaluation. Then we'll pick up Niti Aayog. And thereafter, right, once we are done with that, we will simply take up the concept of the investment models. We'll discuss the concept of infrastructure in India. That is what we are going to cover for tomorrow. Now, if you have any kind of questions related to whatever we have covered today, start asking. Any kind of questions. At any question on anything that I've covered today. You have any doubts? Please ask me. Sir, when will you stop the class? That is the only doubt. Correct? When will you leave us? When will you stop and right, basically, right, help us run away from economics? That is the only doubt that you people will have. Okay, done then. Right? Nobody is asking questions. I believe, right, it's because all of you have understood. Because there are two possibilities. So I've understood everything, so I will not ask any question. A second, which is very, very dangerous. Sir, I've not understood anything, so I don't know where to start asking questions. Right? I hope it is the first case for all of you, not the second case. Done then? Right? See you tomorrow. Why are 5-year plans discontinued? Like I've said, there was an election that was conducted in 2014, government changed. And the new government basically said, this is a past experience, right? This is something that we have been doing in the last 70 years. There is no use of this concept now. So they said, let's discontinue it. Right? And this is not a constitutional requirement also. So they have removed it. Done? Okay. Right? What is investment income? In what context are you asking? I don't know. And let me know. Okay, done then. Let's stop the discussion today. Yeah, we'll continue with the discussion tomorrow. We'll start with first 5-year plan starting at 10 AM tomorrow. Okay, done. Take care. See you tomorrow.